Your life is so dreadful that now the only way for you to suppress your emotions is to watch other people go ahead and become successful, doing the things that you wish you could do, but you're unable to. And that's the reality. I'm doing the things that I'm supposed to do, right? I'm getting things done. But it's like, are those the highest leverage things that you should be doing? Or are you escaping something else that you should be doing? I promise you, ikhwa, if you don't believe me, I dare you. Just put your phone away for 2 weeks. Just for 2 weeks. You'll start to realize how you're not what you thought you were. I put it that way, to be kind.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome again to Central and COO. We're not co as in co, but co as in COO. I'm here today with Fawaz.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
What are we talking about today, Sheikh?
You tell me, Ak.
We're talking about escapism, right? And this is something which a lot of people are jahil about. And a lot of the time they know the reality that they're escaping, but they don't want to accept it. So we're here to expose them for this, inshallah.
Inshallah, man. Let's do it.
Bismillah. Today we're dissecting the ugly truth behind escapism. And it needs to be said, escapism is killing your deen, your masculinity, and your future. So let's get into it. So my first question for you, Sheikh, is what is escapism?
Escapism, man. Good question. Escapism is essentially you escaping, as the word suggests, right? Something or someone, could be perhaps many things, right? It's simply you taking yourself out of a situation, right, that you should currently be in, something you should currently be taking care of or focusing on, but you escape. So escapism is going away from that thing. Does that make sense? So escaping something, let's say, for example, I need to do a project, right? But rather than do the project, I decide to go out with, my friends, or, while I should be building a six-figure company and leading the company, I decide to do things like editing video clips or something like that. Does that make sense? It's a form of escapism. Now, escapism can be a good and a bad thing, right? For example, salah is a form of escapism, right? Dua is a form of escapism. It's you escaping the reality of the dunya and just putting your head down to Allah, right? But it is still escaping. You're escaping something. Right? So what needs to be understood is it becomes a bad thing when, and majority of times it is a bad thing, right? And people engage majority of the times in unhealthy forms of escapism. Now, I'm not going to say all escapism, like I said, is bad, right? Sometimes it has to be done, right? For your benefit and for your mental health in a way, right? But the problem comes when you're escaping, doing something you're actually meant to do, right? And that's important for you to do. Does that make sense?
Okay, so it's kind of disguised like something that's good sometimes.
Yeah.
Or your fake productivity, essentially, sometimes.
Sometimes it can be. Now, majority of the times when people are engaging in escapism, I think they sort of know it's a bad thing, but they haven't realized that this, what I'm doing, and it's a form of escapism. I'll give you an example, right? One of my clients, alhamdulillah, he runs a six-figure company, Allah barik, we ask Allah to increase him. And I was dealing with him and he keeps telling me, we're basically dissecting what he does, right? We have this hourly activity thing, the blog that they type up every hour, what they spent their time doing. And the reason we do this is to actually understand where the hours are going, because sometimes you think you're working, perhaps, but you're not really working. So fake work and fake productivity, all right? So when we looked at it and we dissected, his whole schedule, one thing I realized is a lot of the things he was doing, the work that needs to be done for the company, but it isn't work that he should be doing. Why do I say that? Quite obviously because he is the leader of the company. The leader of the company should be focusing majority of his time and attention in doing things that drive the company forward, not things that any Tom, Dick and Harry can do, like making posters on Canva. He needs to bring in someone for that, right? So when I was looking at his activity blog, and I was like, bro, why are you doing that, right? You have X, Y, Z to do. It's like, yeah, you know what? I just wanted to get it done. He's escaping, right? He thinks he's being productive by doing these things, but really he's escaping the hard work that needs to be done, the hard time that needs to be spent driving the company forward. And that's how dangerous escapism can be.
Okay, subhanAllah. And that reminds me, one of the brothers, Allahumma barik, he's got $500,000 company a year. And obviously now he's like, okay, pretty much he's chilling, right? So you're seeing him, he's taking emails, he's taking calls. When he knows that this company can really grow to that next level, but because he's just like, probably comes back down to a bit of self-concept as well. So because of that lack of self-concept, the result of that is he escapes by using these smaller tasks to fill his time during the day. Although he knows there's higher leverage tasks he could be doing. So it's not really jahl, but more so he covers it up to make it look like he's doing something.
100%. It's a massive deception, right? Because the worst part about it is it's different. A bum who's a bum, he just knows he's a bum, right? It's clear in the way he lives that he's a bum. He's not doing things that are important. But escapism is particularly dangerous when the forms of escapism, the things you use as escapism, are in a way productive, right? Because it deceives you that I'm doing the things that I'm supposed to do, right? I'm getting things done. But it's like, are those the highest leverage things that you should be doing? Or are you escaping something else that you should be doing?
Okay, subhanAllah. So you're talking about, okay, the people that, let's say, these are the kind of the gooder ones that use escapism, but there's the people that are just constantly scrolling and doing all these different habits. And you mentioned something in your Telegram, right? You said that every hour spent scrolling, gaming, and binge watching is time you never get back. You said 2 hours of scrolling a day equals 14 hours a week, 60 hours a month, 730 hours a year, which in total is 30 days consistently, non-stop of scrolling a year. 1/12 of the year is spent scrolling. So you're not just wasting time, you're also selling your soul to the dunya.
100%. I think something that's so important here is when you start to realize how valuable time is, you start to be very, very careful with your time. And this is why one of the first things when I'm working with my clients that we actually focus on actually working on is where their time is going and yani, how efficient they are with their time. Look, yani, Hassan al-Basri, he says something beautiful, right? He says, Yabni Adam, innakum ayyam. Yani, you guys are days, right? Dhahaba yawman, dhahaba ba'dukum. As the days pass, a part of you passes as well. One thing you need to understand is it's so important to understand where your time is going, right? And I actually did the maths, right? Because I took a couple of the brothers' phone when I was on traveling with them, and I'm seeing the screen times. I'm like, bro, open up your phone, open up your settings, you know, because people get really scared when you tell them to open up their phone, right? So I'm just like, nah, bro, just pop open your settings and go on screen time. I just want to see what your screen time is. And I'm going through and I'm seeing, subhanAllah, so many of them, like 4 hours on TikTok a day, right? On average, 2 hours on Instagram, 6 hours on, like ridiculous numbers, right? And it seems like it's whatever, right? It's just like he's spending a couple of hours a day on YouTube, right? But when you do the maths, just 2 hours a day of scrolling is what? That's 14 hours every week. Sahula, right? Cool. That's 60 hours every month, give or take. Okay. And that's 730 hours in a year, meaning you've spent 1/12 of your year, 1 month out of the 12 months you have in your life. If you scroll consecutively 2 hours in a day, eventually by the end of the year, you've spent a month of your time on Instagram. 1 month. That's a lot of time, right? And the way you did that, by the way I broke that down is because obviously we're even looking at it from a nice standpoint. If you do the maths, really and truly, we only probably have like 10 proper hours in a day, right? So to spend 2 hours scrolling is so problematic because let's say on average people sleep 8 hours a day, right? You're left with about 16. Let's put time on transport or, you know, life, eating, and things like showering, etc. We've done the maths, we've broken it down before, and you only have about 10 to like 12 focused hours in a day, hours where you're actually like able to do things, right? That isn't life, that just things that don't have to be done. This is open hours, right? And one of the things that we realized, like if you only have 10 hours, for you to spend 20% of that time scrolling on social media, that's problematic, right? 20% scrolling on social media, that's so problematic. And when you speak to these people, it's like, I feel horrible. I'm not doing well, right? I don't get things done. So what does he do? He's like, you know what? I've been scrolling on social media all day. That feels horrible. A pain comes with it. And here's where we get into what I refer to as the trap of escapism. So you escape a problem. Something in your life is happening. Maybe you have an issue. So what do? You pull out social media because like it kind of it makes you forget a little bit, right? It makes you forget a little bit. You can escape that problem, whatever it is that you're going through.
So kind of like halal drugs.
In a way, right? So it gives you that form of a getaway, right? Now you're able to put your mind in something else, right? Then the problem, what happens when you escape, you feel more pain. It's because the problem gets worse, which makes you feel a lot more pain. Like this thing nothing is changing about this thing. So what do? You go back and you scroll on social media again. And this is majority of people, unfortunately, life. They're stuck in a cycle, right? They are trying to become this person that is productive, etc., blah, 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 blah. But it's the same thing. They scroll, they feel the pain from scrolling. So they scroll more, which leads them to feel more pain. So how do they solve that pain? They scroll more. I give you an example. Guys that don't make 10, 20K per month, right? They're not comfortable, right? So they're seeing on social media how to make 10 to 20K per month. And he feels pain because now he's like seeing people live a certain type of lifestyle. This is how social media can actually make people depressed, by the way, right? He's seeing all these people live a certain type of lifestyle and he's like, I don't live that. So what does he do? Rather than actually get to work and perhaps build something for himself, no, he feels a lot of pain. So what does he do? He goes to watch more videos of people who are succeeding. He starts to follow YouTubers, watches their vlogs. And this happens, slowly what starts to happen is he's no longer the main character in his life. And that's the problem. Now he's given precedence to this guy that he watches. And I've seen it with, name top guys in the industry. You see guys start to put them on the wallpaper like we've talked about in previous podcasts, right? Guys start to, put them as their lock screen on their phone. They follow every bit of news that happens to them. This is the same thing with footballers. By the way, like people think like, why is this guy so against watching football? But I don't think there's a problem per se with like watching a game or two here and there, but it's when people immerse themselves in a football club or an individual, right? This individual, whether he wins or loses, right, or scores or doesn't score affects your mood.
Yeah, but I watch them to like get inspiration from them.
And what have you done with all the inspiration you've gained? How many times do I hear people say, yeah, like watching football really helps me in terms of like, you know, when I play the game, but ask him how often he plays, right? You have to understand there's a difference between entertainment and education. And there's become a thin line between them when we use social media today, right?
So how do I know if I'm being deceived between the two?
It's very easy, right? Ask yourself, did you actually learn key points that you can take away from this thing? I always say, if you've watched a video, whether it was educational or not, without a pen and a paper, you deceived yourself. That's not learning, that's entertainment. You're going to retain very little of the information, right? If anything. Does that make sense?
But it's ironic you say that because you have a podcast.
Yeah, of course I have a podcast and I give gems in the podcast, so people should get their pens and papers if they want to benefit greatly from it, right? And write the things down. Does that make sense? What you have to understand is when anybody's life, when something happens in someone else's life, if that makes me more emotional than something in my life that's going on, there's a serious problem. And that's evidence and a sign that you're not the main character in your own life. I know guys that, for example, they have certain football players, like let's say, for example, Mo Salah or Cristiano Ronaldo, like how he performs or how the team, let's say, performs, Man United or whatever it is, Chelsea, how they perform kind of decides his whole mood for the rest of the week. And you're telling me there isn't a problem with that? Hey, that's the highest form of escapism, right? Your life is so dreadful, right? And that's truly what it actually is. Your life is that dreadful that now the only way for you to suppress your emotions is to watch other people go ahead and become successful doing the things that you wish you could do, but you're unable to. And that's the reality, right? Anyone who is seriously like in love with football needs to understand why the whole concept of entertainment and these type of things came from in the first place. When you look at it back at the time of the Romans, right? And when they had their empires and, you know, what was it called? The Colosseum. So they made them fight in the rings, right? Do you know why they did this? It was actually just to distract people from the situations that was going on with the government, etc., issues they were having. So it'd be kind of like this one thing. Everyone's attention would be on this thing. They'd be focusing on this thing. They'd realize like, whoa, like this is so entertaining. This person died and this is happening, that it'd make them forget about the things that actually matter. My point is things like football and YouTubers and YouTube channels and all of these things, Instagram rules, they can be a form of escapism for this thing. Because you're spending so much time focusing on those things, you actually start to forget to focus on what actually matters.
Okay, very good. Allahumma barik. So now I want to kind of go now and understanding deeper into the issue. So we've talked about how like different ways that it can exist, etc., etc. But why is it such a big problem that men of today should just not escape? Is it not good? Is it not healthy, for example, for me to just take a break? I'm working for so long. Can I just take a break and, you know, scroll for a bit or do this or that?
See, like I mentioned to you, bro, it's not a problem per se with scrolling, right? Personally, I'm against scrolling on social media. I don't believe it's purposeful, and I struggle to do anything that there isn't a direct benefit to doing so, right? When you think of it, and I always ask people like, okay, you scroll on social media, let's say specifically Instagram, right? Like how much really do you gain, right? Like obviously you can censor your, you know, platform a little bit. You can censor your feed and make it as, you know, halal as possible and make it as, you know, dini as possible and make it as business as possible. But at the end of the day, like it's just, if you seek proper knowledge, Instagram isn't the place to get it, right? Snapchat isn't the place to get it. Now, I know we're going to get asked like, okay, but you post on these platforms. Yeah, because the game is the game. Does that make sense?
What does that mean?
The game is the game and the game has to be played, right? Of course, we're going to post on it because we understand that people watch it and people benefit from it and then we help them. All of our clients that have worked with us have reported like a massive decrease in the time they use social media. They start to realize that social media is a tool, right? And if you're not using it to make money, you're being made money off of. Like people are making money off you. Does that make sense? Same thing as Instagram, YouTube, all the same platforms, right? If you're not making money off being it, right? People are making money off you. And that's everything in life almost.
So it kind of goes back then to one of the older kind of podcasts that we've done, which is the vision one, right? When you know exactly what you're looking for, you said that your actions, every single action that you do must be aligned with that objective and that vision that you have, right? So even if a person decides to go on social media, you're saying that he should have a very clear objective of what he's trying to accomplish, pen and paper, and just go for that and that solely.
100%. Bro, one thing you really need to understand is you need to learn the value of time. As human beings, I think we've been deceived a little bit. You know, we've been told to enjoy our times. You know, one of the things I was always told, right, was to enjoy my 20s and my teenagers and, you know, stop being so uptight and enjoy life, etc., and escape as much as possible. But really and truly, like, that's just dead, right? Live and enjoy your 20s is probably the worst advice I've probably ever received in my life, right? And really and truly, it's probably one of the worst advices that are globalized in today's world, right? What's the point of enjoying your 20s, right? If I enjoy, now I'm not saying, Yani, live a horrible life and don't enjoy anything. I'm saying this whole concept of living life to the fullest and doing everything you want to do and, being free in your 20s and, making decisions that could possibly detriment and destroy your future. But anyway, it's because you're 20, it's fine, right? It's horrible advice. Really and truly, if you lock it in, right, during your young ages, as much as possible, you decide what you want in life and you actually go chase that thing. Like by the end of, let's say, your 20s, your late 20s, maybe early 30s, you'll be a lot happier than the majority of people. The people who tell you to enjoy your 20s and live life, if you actually look at it, they live very sad lives, right? And that's exactly why they promote the living of the 20s. But people who choose not to escape in their 20s and to actually put their head down and become serious tend to be very, very much happier and fulfilled, and they get a lot more out of life towards their late 20s, early 30s, right? And this is, I'm going to give you a bit of evidence here. I want you to think of any great man, right? If you think about it, he didn't really enjoy his 20s. Any person who's great at anything had to give up their young ages in order to live that life that people lived in their 20s now for the rest of their life. And look at Cristiano Ronaldo, for example, right? Any guy you want to name, I always tell people, bring me any name who's successful in any field. Let's say in boxing, you have maybe I don't know who's a successful boxer, maybe Anthony Joshua. Well, like anybody you look at, all right? They had to, Khabib, in terms of the UFC, they had to give up a lot of their young ages and become disciplined and stick to something and not escape. So now their life is what everyone was chasing, right? Everyone was escaping. Here's what I tell people. Why go on holiday, right? For like 15 days, 30 days, spend all of your money that you've saved, right? Just to return back to the lifestyle that you hate. That's escapism. That's the biggest form of escapism. I've never understood it, right? You know what I'd rather do? I'd rather put that money into creating a life where every day feels like a holiday, right? And we see a lot of the kuffar, what do? Monday and Thursday, Monday to Friday is so horrible and dreadful that they just escape on the weekends, get absolutely smashed, right? In order to prepare themselves for Monday again, right? So it's escapism. Rather than escaping, just make the life you want to live every day. Does that make sense? For me, not choosing not to escape in my teenage ages, alhamdulillah, I've been able to build a 6 and 7 figure companies, right? Alhamdulillah, I get to travel wherever I want. I get to buy the things that I want, and it doesn't put me in like financial detriment because I didn't choose them forms as escapism when I was younger. Does that make sense? So at the end of the day, whoever chooses not to escape, right, will live the benefits of it at a later stage.
Okay, now I think we've kind of understood the deeper issue of escapism now. Let's talk about the conventional life script, okay? So you posted on Central Point. Do you think that's all life? Grow up, go uni, get a job, have kids, then die? Delusional. Keep living like there's no consequence.
I think this is a big one, subhanAllah, because when you look at the way men are living today, it's actually kind of scary, bro, right? So if you're actually to break it down, like think about it, like what's the point? Sometimes you think, what's the point? Like you live life, you grow up, you just get a job, work for a couple of years, raise kids and die. If that's all there is to you, there is a serious problem. And I can understand why you'd fall into like depression and you'd feel pain. And it goes back to the vision, right? You need to work on building something that is bigger than you, right? That's the only way it makes sense. Otherwise, what's the point, right? If you are not spending your whole time building something that is bigger than you, of course, you're going to start to feel like, demotivated. You're not going to be able to stick to a high standard of life for very long. You're going to want to give up quite quickly. You have to establish, what am I trying to gain, right? What's the point? Everything you do has to have a point, right? The best thing and the greatest thing I've seen when it comes to successful people are very intentional. They have a difficult time saying something, doing something that doesn't have some sort of benefit or reason behind it, right? And this goes back to the statement. I posted it on my story. My teacher told me, it's beautiful. He says, Al-mu'min la yaf'al ayy shay bidun sabab, right? So a believer shouldn't do anything. He doesn't do anything unless there's a clear reason to why he's doing it, right? So you need to be intentional. If you're scrolling through social media, tell me what's the point, all right? And this is my point. When you ask people these questions, like, bro, like I've asked brothers before, like, bro, you've been scrolling your phone for 8 hours today. What's wrong? Oh yeah, I'm looking at business ideas. So what have you actually done though? So again, escapism, right? So you don't actually do anything, but it tricks you. And this is the most dangerous form of escapism, like I mentioned. When you think it's actually productive escapism, when you're deceiving yourself. Because self-deception, by the way, is very easy. It's very easy for me to do something horrible and to deceive myself that it was the correct thing to do. Does that make sense?
You just gave me a different perspective, because even when it comes to things like university, right? Because as a man, you're going to reach a stage where it's like, I actually don't know where I'm going next in my life. And that's the point where you should be reflecting and saying, okay, where do I go next? But because society has put that over you, it's like, go university. That's actually a form of escapism.
Yeah, that's nonsense. Like, how can you tell a guy who doesn't know what he wants to do, just go in and do any 4-year degree and you know what, that's going to solve your problem? Like, don't be ridiculous. You don't have any direction in life, so don't go to uni and spend 36 grand or put yourself in debt for majority of people unless you understand very clearly what you want to achieve from this. Does that make sense? It's all a form of escape. There's so many forms of escapism today. And that is the scary part, because people don't realize it, but so many things are escapism, right? When you constantly go on, like so many times, yeah, you'll go on YouTube and I promise you, you're not looking for anything, but you just keep scrolling to see what's on your feed, sah? That's clear escapism. That shows you don't even need to do this. You're not even looking for anything. Clearly, what you just want is to escape. Does that make sense? And that's why, like, I'm going to be honest, I'm against, like, watching movies. Like, I struggle to watch anything that there's a main character who I'm supposed to pour all my emotions into that's fake when I have my own life and I'm the main character of my life. Like, men need to actually start caring a lot more about themselves, right? And I know it sounds horrible, perhaps, but you do, because you're the one who has complete control over you. Whether Ronaldo wins Ballon d'Or this year or not doesn't make doesn't make any difference to my life, right? I always say, like, isn't it funny, football fans, right? And I'm just going to break it down, call it what you like, say I'm a buzzkill. But, you know, they spend money to watch these people play football, and they put all their emotions into these people. They cry when their team loses a game, right? And, you know, they smile, they're happy, absolutely delighted when their team wins a game or when the favorite football player scores. But, like, you know, I thought about, like, win or lose, bro. Them guys get 250K coming off the pitch. What do you get? You've just spent your time and your money. He's the main character in his life. You're not the main character in yours. Your emotions depends on another human being's success. How ridiculous is that, right?
See, now, what I was going to say is, when it comes to a lot of these things, and you're saying, okay, social media is escapism and this, that you're just a very naturally accountable person, right? So what role would you say that accountability has in breaking this cycle of escapism?
Yeah, I think, like I said, if all people were to spend a bit of time at the end of the day, just asking themselves, like, did today's performance, like, align with the objective, with the vision? Right? And the problem is, if you don't have a vision first, you're going to struggle, right? And there's actually one thing I want to say first. When you think about it, the people who engage in escapism majority of the time is due to the fact that they have a lack of direction. They don't know what they're doing in life. So what do? Anything. They escape, right? Because that's a pain. That's kind of painful to say. Like, I genuinely don't know what I'm doing out of life. Like, I genuinely don't know what I'm trying to do. I've seen it so much, especially with young people, right? Because it's much more clearer. Like, he's like, you know what, bro? I'm just gonna do an apprenticeship in flipping carpentry, and it's like, why? Because like, bro, something. If I don't have any direction, so I may as well do something. No, like, find what you want to do. Right? That's not gonna solve the problem. That's just you pushing it away. Does that make sense? I'll give you many forms. It's sort of the escapism. It's sort of, to break it down. I probably should have said this at the start. If you're looking for an easy way to understand escapism, it's literally the ostrich effect. Now, what do ostriches do? Do you know what ostriches do when they're in danger? Right? Ostriches actually bury their head in the ground when they sense danger. Now, does that somehow, like, make the danger around them disappear? No, but just because they can't see it, I mean, it makes them feel perhaps better, right? It's the same thing. Because you don't have to think about the thoughts of you have absolutely nothing to do and you don't know what direction you're taking in life, it makes you feel a little bit better, right? But the problem with it is it's a temporary solution for what will be a permanent problem if you don't seek to fix it. And it only results in more pain. So you can't be accountable if you don't know what to hold yourself to account against, is the point. Does that make sense? Like, if I'm accounting your exam today, right? There has to be a certain standard I expect you to reach. There has to be something I'm comparing it to as such. You can't hold something accountable against nothing, right? So you need to establish, what kind of person am I supposed to be? Do I want to be? Am I going to be? And that's the kind of person you put yourself up to account against. Does that make sense? So I have this idea and this understanding of how Ideal for us performs, how much money he has, which is basically the vision, right? How much he's been able to do for people. And I can very easily see, right, if I'm on track just by comparing my daily actions to that guy that I want to become. Does that make sense?
So I think there's two steps. The first step is actually identifying where the issues are. Because a lot of people, it's actually, you know, escapism, like you mentioned, goes into many different aspects. But the first thing is, I don't even know where my issues are. I'm just so lost with my life. So then they find out, then, okay, now they've brought the issues to the surface level. Then they escape again. It's like, okay, now I've got all these issues. What do I do next? So how do I, because like, for example, now I see all these issues and I've got all these responsibilities. Escapism kind of weakens, you know, your ability to fulfill the responsibilities. And it's not just a distraction. It's more like, to be honest, and as sensitive as this is, it's a form or a trap that leads to even suicide.
100%. It does, all right? Because I've seen it, and particularly recently, subhanAllah, for one of the brothers, just from speaking to him, you know, his sister recently passed, she died from suicide, right? And wallahi, like, he was explaining the whole situation to me, right? It wasn't her fault. She was quite young. She was under the age, I believe 16, right? So she was quite young, but you could see the system was only giving her forms of escapism, these temporary solutions, rather than actually solving the problem at its core. They're just always giving these temporary solutions. And here's the big problem. When you build a life of escaping, the day you can't escape, it's going to be a very difficult day for you. Does that make sense? When you build a life and and that's why when you take away people's phone, they almost start twitching, bro, right? Because he uses this thing to escape all the time. Now you've taken it away from him. He doesn't know how to live. He genuinely doesn't know how to live. Because now he actually has to address his problems, right? Because he has nowhere to run to. And this is what I'm saying. There's no problem with escaping life every now and then. Like, look, I ride horses to escape, like, you know, life. But the point is, or I do different things, like, you know, things that have benefit, of course, I believe in, because again, you shouldn't do anything without a good reason. But there's things like even going for a walk, it could be a form of escapism from, like, you know, your home and from people. Sometimes it's healthy, but it's unhealthy where you're escaping and you're not addressing the problem at its core. Does that make sense? So what do I mean by this? Like, if I'm escaping, like, okay, let's say, for example, I got into an argument with one of my friends and we were in the same room, and you know what? I stepped out. That's escapism. It is. Because rather than actually sitting down and us just like sitting down and sorting out the problem at its core, I've just chosen to step out of the room, right? It doesn't make anything better. When I come back home, the problem is still going to be waiting for me. Does that make sense? And it worsens. Because like, how could you just walk out? Why didn't you just sort out here and there? And then thoughts come and this and that comes. So it's like, cool, I sort it out. And then it's like, bro, I'm just going to take a bit of air. That's fine, right? But I'm not escaping perhaps anything that needs to be addressed. So what I'm trying to establish is the problem here comes when you're using these things like football, social media, etc. as a form to escape the problems that you have in your life. And people do. Let's not lie, right? And let's be honest, majority of the time, yeah, and I've spoke to people about this, right? You speak to him, he was doing something really, really difficult. And he was like, you know what? He just pulls his phone out for like 2 minutes. Just 2 minutes. He was doing something. It started to get hard. So what does his mind naturally want to do? Escape. And I know you lot watching, how experience is this? We all do, right? You're in a bit of work. It starts to get a little bit hard. So what do? You crave that, just relief, that getaway. So you pick up your phone, open it, and scroll through social media. That doesn't, like, you're still going to have to return back to the stress. Does that make sense?
I'm still really my mind is still bogged on the fact that this can really lead to suicide.
Yeah, man.
Because like it starts small. Like even for example, one time we worked for so long, and we were getting tired. And I remember you were working, and you were like, "Yeah, let me go make some Moroccan tea." Do you remember that day? And then you were like, "Wait, this is actually escapism. I just drank Moroccan tea. I don't need to drink Moroccan tea."
It happens all the time. It's like so many times when we're in the middle of work and we're like, you know what, I'm hungry. I'm going to go down to the fridge. You're probably not hungry. You're just tired of the work that you're doing. You just don't want to do it anymore. All right.
And the issue then becomes is like every time you like increase that intensive, because again, escapism after a certain point is okay, that's numbing. I mean, Moroccan tea is not enough. I need to do this, drink an espresso, this. And then it starts to get into maybe activities until a certain point. It's like, there's nothing I can do on this earth that I can escape from anymore. I just have to escape from earth altogether.
Yeah. Escapism is dangerous, man. It's very, very dangerous. And this is what I've been telling people, like, learn to stop escaping, address problems head on, right? And especially as a man, that's a mentality that you have to adopt. Like, I'll give you an example, right? I was with a brother, right? And we went on holiday, right? Just a trip. Now, I went with a purpose, of course, but there was just a trip we went on, alhamdulillah, sort of like a holiday. And, you know, when we got back, he was like, I'm not opening my bank account. I goes, why? He goes, bro, I'm scared to check like what's inside. Like, that doesn't change the fact that you blew your hope. Now, by the way, it wasn't my fault. If you're gonna come with the big boys, get ready to spend big boy money. But you know what I'm saying? Like, I was like, bro, that doesn't change anything. The mentality is, okay, let me see what damage I've done and know how much work needs to be done over the next to repair it. People think not addressing a problem somehow makes the problem go away. No, the world just doesn't work like that. Or because like I don't pay a parking ticket doesn't mean the parking ticket disappears. They just add more fines to it and add more percent. So my point is, address the problems head on. It's the same thing in your company. So many times, honestly, like I've wanted to kick someone out of the company, but I'm like, you know what? I'm not dealing with him, right? I'm not dealing with him. Like I'm just choosing to escape from doing what actually needs to be done, right? What happens, it's like the guy's fungus, bro. He just destroys the whole company until now I have to kick him out in a much more difficult way than I would have had to. And now it ends all ugly, and do you know what I'm saying, right? And maybe he spread corruption already within the company. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? So by not addressing the problem straight away, or the issue straight away, or doing what you're trying to do straight away, it causes far more issues, right? So many times we engage in escapism, right? If I'm tired of somebody, I shouldn't run away from it. I should tell him, bro, like these couple of things you're doing, it's annoying me, right? Because me going away from him today or choosing not to spend time with him today and tomorrow the next day and start avoiding him, he's still going to stay the same because I haven't told him the problem. Rather, if I just sit him down and chat to him, it's fine. Does that make sense?
Okay, so now I want to go back again. And in terms of the solutions now, okay? What questions do you ask yourself, first of all, to understand that, okay, I'm escaping? And then what do you do to change that?
You see, whenever I want to do something, one of the questions I ask myself, right? Because, you know, your brain comes up with these thoughts all the time, like, you know what, I want to go eat. Or, you know what, I want to go out and get a cup of coffee. It's like, do I actually want to do this thing, or am I escaping from something else? All right? And changing this question really helped me, like, you know, even marriage, honestly, marriage can be a form of escapism. I hear brothers all the time say, I want to get married. No, he just has no direction of his life, so he thinks somehow marriage is going to save him from absolutely everything he's going through, right? Or, you know what, I'm tired of living here. I want to move countries, or I want to go somewhere for the weekend. It's like, why are you doing it? And I'm not saying, like I said, escapism sometimes is fine, right? If I'm very stressed in a certain place and I'm working towards fixing the issues, but I just want to get a break, refresh, maybe organize my thoughts so I can, you know, fix some things when I come back, that's fine. It's not an issue. The problem comes when you're not addressing that thing and you're just going. Does that make sense? And escapism actually happens when it comes to the deen as well, right? And I'm going to give you, it's kind of like a trap that you end up in sins, right? So you start with small sins, right? Then you feel the pain of sinning, dhulm ala nafsik, right? So you're sinning against yourself. So what do? You start to engage in what? Bigger sins to suppress the pain of the sins that you've already done. And then that comes with more pain, and it's a cycle until you keep doing bigger and bigger and bigger sins. And that's the importance of actually cutting the cycle and making tawbah as soon as possible. As soon as you do something, repenting, right? So it's that whole concept of, the more you escape, the deeper the forms of escapism you're going into becomes, right? And the more problematic your situation comes. And that's why people, like, they can't handle anything difficult these days because they're used to escapism. All right. The second you put them in a slightly difficult situation, he can't hack it without some form of, like, he needs some sort of relief. All right. And that's where the problem lies.
So you think men should actually learn to just build that pressure tolerance, that when something pressureful, you need to just, no. There's no escaping. I just have to deal with this. And it just becomes easier.
Escape at the end. All right. When it's done, have a getaway.
That's a reward than a getaway.
100%.
You know?
So it's like, it's the same way we look at it, right? Like, after we work really, really hard, like, you know, maybe on a certain project, we're like, cool, we're out of here. We call up our guy, Hudayfa, in the Swira, tell him prep the horses. Does that make sense? It's after the day's job has been done. But midway, I'm not escaping it, because my big problem with escapism is when you escape, you still have to come back to that thing eventually. And that's where the problem lies. And again, I've been dealing with this with so many of our clients. Like, some of the biggest issues is escapism. In fact, by the way, making money, trying to make money, can be the biggest form of escapism. Yeah. Let's talk about this. SubhanAllah, one of my clients actually asked me after we had sort of a call. He goes, I just wanted to ask, do you think that one of the ways that people engage in escapism today is trying to make money? Right? And if you actually look at it, 100% yes. What is every single person that is young and has social media chasing right now 10K per month. 10K per month. They're all chasing this 10K per month. Actually, the guy has so many issues. He has like personal issues, physically, he's not even healthy. All these issues he has, right? But the only thing, he just wants to escape in this path to trying to make money, right? And we see this all the time. Brothers ignore things like, you know, these responsibilities they have, and they say, it's because I'm doing this thing. I'm trying to build this thing. He's escaping from the things that he should be focusing on, that with something that is productive, right? So escapism can be even in the things that are productive, that are important, like we mentioned. I'll give you an example, right? When you looked at it, one of the days, Umar bin Khattab, right, radiallahu anhu, he came into the masjid with a stick. He started beating the guys out of the masjid, right? Because why? The guy has spent all the day praying in the masjid while he's not providing for his family. He needs to go provide, right? Now, I'm not saying he was escaping, but I'm saying this is how focusing on one thing and not having all of your things spread out can cause imbalance in your life. Does that make sense? So the only way to actually maintain a balanced life is to, again, don't use business as an escapism when it comes to your family. Don't use family as an escapism when it comes to your friends. Don't use friends as you need to start to fulfill a balanced life.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
And as I said, I even know we both know one of the brothers. He's really, really attached to his car, right? Allahumma barik, right? He's got an amazing car. But the reality of things is when that car left, because again, it's a form of escapism. His life he's not very happy with his life. So he has this nice car, adrenaline rush. But once it's gone, he's depressed. He's like...
Yeah, you know, that was so crazy to me. And I remember I looked at you and I goes, yeah, that's precisely what escapism is.
And what was the other form of escapism he was using?
Other form of escapism he was using. It was a boxer. I can't remember.
He laughs a lot.
Laughs, yes. Allah understand. Jokes. Constantly joking, right? The situation will be really deep and serious. And, you know, it's how his brain escapes dealing with it. And subhanAllah, I actually just want to talk about the car point real quick as well, right? Because everyone's thing is different. I'll be honest with you, right? Everyone's thing is different. Some people really love cars. Some people really love football. Some people really love horses. But the problem isn't to love these things. It's to use it, like we mentioned, as a form of escapism. Because whenever he'd deal with an issue, you know what he'd do? Rather than address the issue, he'd go in the car in the middle of the night and he just drives. And then he told me, look, akhi, when the car left, wallah, I was depressed. Because now he has nothing to run towards, right? Should be saleh, but now he has nothing to run towards when he has like a major issue or a bottleneck in his life, etc.
You know, one thing that even when you were training us and the other mentors, right, to start mentoring people, you're like, the first answer that someone gives you when you're trying to break down a situation is going to be fluff. Sometimes even the second answer. And I remember you asked his brother, Akhi, how are you? Alhamdulillah, bro, I'm good. And then you were like, no, but how are you? Because he's already convinced his mind, because he's escaped, he's already convinced my life is okay. When he's like, wait, let me just actually, my life is not going so good.
If you look at people who escape a lot, their life is actually a lot more horrible than they think. But they've never thought about it or addressed it. So they think they're doing a lot more better than they are, right? And this is the reality, especially with social media. I promise you, ikhwa, if you don't believe me, I dare you, just put your phone away for 2 weeks. Just for 2 weeks. You'll start to realize how you're not what you thought you were. I put it that way, to be kind, right? You're going to realize that whoever you thought you were, you're not that guy. Just put your phone away for 2 weeks. And you know why, by the way, I keep attacking the phone? It's because what an easy form of escapism it is. All it takes is this. Like, it's always on you. Like, to ride horses, bro, I still have to drive and move and like whatever, with a car, like there's still some sort of perhaps friction. But like with a phone, like that's why you see people on trains, like no one thinks or does anything anymore. They just escape. As soon as the guy gets a 5-minute break from work, it's like his relief.
It doesn't even matter what he's doing. Like I've seen man them use calculator. Like
and they're not calculating nothing, bro. Wallahi. And they do nothing. So it's like, if I don't have a purpose on doing this thing that I'm doing, just don't do it. That's what I always tell people. If there's no purpose behind whatever you're doing, then don't do it. The only way to become successful is to be intentional. You have to make sure that every single one of your actions that you do has some sort of benefit, real benefit, not a benefit you've fooled yourself into believe. Does that make sense? So this is one of the greatest things I believe in, just understanding that, look, let me take some time, and I encourage all of you guys watching to do this, inshallah. Just take some time away from all methods of escapism. You're still gonna escape. I remember when I stopped using social media, right? The next thing I picked up was what? Was like watching educational things on YouTube. And I realized like, it's not really educational, right? Because I'm not really like benefiting or learning from it. But it's like, then I stopped watching educational things on YouTube. Now I like to, let's say, chill out and drink tea, all right? It's fine. Escapism can be good if you learn to use it well. So for example, some people's escapism is gym. If he still at the end of the day handles the issues and he uses gym at the end as like a form of like relief, that's good. Does that make sense? So it's not necessarily escaping, but it's a sense of like a break, if you will, taking some time out. Make sure what you're doing is productive. The problem with social media is if like you're working on a project and you scroll through social media, like at the break, during a break, you've actually fried your mind, right? Social media doesn't help your mind relax. During a break, your mind should relax, should get away from what you're doing. Scrolling through social media doesn't help your mind relax. In fact, it makes your mind heavily stimulated and actually fries your mind when you use it for a long time. That's why, by the way, people wake up very groggy in the morning, right? It's likely either he used his phone before getting out of bed or he used his phone before sleeping, right? I'm telling you, every groggy person I've seen, he falls into one of the two categories. He uses his phone right before he sleeps for hours, right? So he gets into bed at 10 p.m., but he actually doesn't go to bed by 11:30. If you ask him, what did you spend that hour and a half doing? He's like, I was just on my phone. What were you doing? Bro, like a reel is 10 to 15 seconds, right? Sometimes up to a minute. So people don't realize it. Do you know how much, right? So let's do the maths, right? And this is so interesting. If you spent an hour scrolling, let's say on average, every reel is about 30 seconds, all right? Cool. People, by the way, don't even spend 30 seconds on reel. On average, people spend around, I think it's like 7 to 10 seconds on each video, right? So if you think, what?
120 reels.
Yeah. No. It's 120 reels in a way. If it's 30 seconds. But let's actually call it what it is here, right? It tends to be about 10 seconds. Meaning, let's reduce some time. On average, you can watch about 5 reels in a minute, right? 5 reels in a minute by 60. Actually, you've watched 300 things. The mind had to like calculate, consume 300 different things. Your mind is fried, bro, in just an hour. So that's why when you see them, they wake up in the morning, they're like, bro, I can tell someone who uses social media just by speaking to him, bro. They tend to have like this fry, like they're waved. Like it's like someone after he smokes weed, sort of, right? They're kind of like waved and daisy in the morning or at nighttime. They're very like just mellow, right? And that's what it does because you're frying your mind. So during a break, if you're working on something hard and you go to social media, when you come back after stimulating your mind that much, how difficult is it going to be to go back and focus on a task? Super difficult. You know what I do during a break? Pick up my coffee and I look at the wall. I know it sounds so tapped, but it actually helps you bring your mind to a calm state before you go back into work again. So I just pick up my cup of coffee on my break, right? When I'm in between, let's say 2 sessions, and I just do nothing. Just look at a wall. Just think about the thing I'm doing. That's boring, isn't it? So that makes, when I go back to the work that I'm doing, it's a lot more fun and stimulating.
Okay, so you've just reconditioned your mind to actually make yourself like that pressure.
Yes, bro. I'll give you an example, right? Take any person, make him stare at a wall for 30 minutes, then give him a jigsaw puzzle. Wallahi, the jigsaw puzzle will be the best thing in the world to him, right? It's so fun. But if you give someone a phone first, and then you give him a jigsaw puzzle, he's like, bun that, give me back the phone, I'm not doing that. And you see it with children as well, right? Give them like something absolutely boring and mellow, and then give them something that on average people find, it's the same thing, bro. When I stopped using social media, I fell in love with reading books. It's so fun. But when I see people, and same thing myself, if my social media use starts to increase, my reading starts to get put to the side. I'm not reading as much books, and I find it difficult to study with my sheikh, and blah, 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 blah. It's because you're overstimulated.
You're telling people that in order to stop escaping and to live a better life, they have to live a boring life.
What's wrong with a boring life? A boring life isn't boring, all right? It's just boring compared to what you're used to. Does that make sense? Like, when I see people, like, reading a book, why does everyone think, oh, that's so boring? Like, why? That's his fun. You're just heavily stimulated, right? So I only like to do things, and I keep mentioning throughout this whole podcast episode because I really want it to go into people's mind. I don't like doing things that don't have a benefit. If I'm eating to refuel, not because I want to just eat for the sake of eating. I don't believe in those concepts, right? So whatever you do it for a point. Even when I eat, bro, I don't like doing, as you know, I don't like doing anything when I eat. I actually find it very annoying when people put out their phones, especially when, like, bro, just eat. Just focus on this one thing, right? Just put your mind and start to focus your mind on the things that you're doing. Life becomes so much more fun. I'm telling you, find me somebody, it's rare in today's day and age, who can eat a meal without turning on something in the background, listening to something, or watching something. That's how stimulated our minds are. We can't even focus on anything anymore. We can't even eat a meal for 10 minutes without doing something else because it's not stimulating enough. Bro, when you stop using social media, bro, just having lunch becomes entertaining. It's nice. Like you're eating, bro. It's actually enjoyable. Does that make sense? Like you don't need to do anything.
SubhanAllah. You know, I remember Sheikh Abdurrahman Hassan you mentioned the playlist series of High Aspirations, and he mentioned about overindulgence. Overindulgence in anything, it will make you like desensitized to that thing. So he was like excessive eating, excessive drinking, excessive anything luxury, excessive reward, it makes you numb to it. So even the idea of going to Jannah and getting grapes and getting this vineyard, it doesn't even seem attractive to anymore because his life is just too high. Or it's like, if you made your life just so chill. Even the other day, we were in the car, you and another brother, Toby, and you guys just got excited over plantain chips. It's like
when you don't consume too much luxuries, you start to love simple things again.
Yeah.
Right? Honestly, it's the same reason I don't wear oud every day, you know? But the day I do put it on, it makes you feel a certain type of way. Does that make sense? Or it's the same reason for me, like when I'm eating, I put it to like the last part of my day, and I don't like eating a lot because the meal, you see how excited I get at the dinner table, bro. Because I haven't eaten, like, you know what I'm saying? I haven't eaten all day. Like that one meal I know I'm going to eat today, like, you know what I'm saying? Not that I have one meal, I have something very light in the morning and then I eat towards Maghrib time, right? That one meal, it's like when you're fasting, due to the lack of indulgence in food, you're so much more excited for the food, right? It's like anything, like, for example, like when I do work, right? It's much more beloved to me. When I'm writing, when I'm reading, it's beloved to me now because I'm not heavily stimulated with other things. I promise you, stop. Whoever thinks that he learns a lot from social media should give up social media and start reading books. And I want him to compare. Wallahi, bro, you know, some days I'm sitting there watching a book, reading a book, I'm getting so excited. Like I'm not talking about reading rubbish fiction books about other main characters that don't exist, by the way, because again, that's another form of escapism. By the way, I didn't know people did that. You know, Harry Potter series and all this nonsense. I didn't know people did that. Like, you know, subhanAllah, like actually read a book about a fictional character that would never exist. Like, it's the biggest form of escapism. I mean, you're not a child anymore. Put away the fiction books and learn real things about life, right? Come on, right? But anyway, like sometimes when I'm reading a book and I see a line and I'm like, you see me laughing and I'm getting my highlight and I'm like, oh, that was sick. I get so excited for that line in a book that like summarizes something that I was thinking about for ages in one beautiful line, right? So you start to enjoy the simple things, and it's so hard to find young people who still have this, right? Who just have this simple mind. That's why the only way to become free is to become disciplined first, because in overindulgence, you're not free, you're trapped.
That. I think that flew over people's heads, because in order to be, can you say that again?
In order to be free,
you
have to become disciplined first. That's when you enjoy things, when you're disciplined. Things taste better when you're disciplined. But when you overindulge, that's when you're actually trapped.
This brings me to a completely random point. But remember we were talking about feminism before and how a lot of these things is actually also one of the forms of escapism, because then they start to overindulge and they say, what? Hurriya. They say this is freedom. But when you speak to them, it's like, wallahi, honestly, if I'm completely honest with you, I hate my life.
Yeah, they're not free. It's just escapism, bro. Like, all these people who are so, like, passionate about some political point, if you look at it, bro, it's just escapism. Honestly, I'm going to sit here and say it, bro. A lot of the people that go out there and protest for certain causes, bro, it's just escapism. He doesn't pray salah, he doesn't do anything, so he wants to escape the fact that he doesn't do the thing in his life. He just wants to make it feel like, I go out there preaching, and what do you guys do? Nothing, but you still don't pray yourself.
And it's always like that. That country's the problem. This is the problem. It might be problems, but
escape. Yeah, that's why I don't sit down with people who talk about things that they can't change, because it's escapism. It gives you sort of that. And here's the big problem when it comes to backbiting or even discussing politics or talking bad about things, etc. Because if I say Muhammad is such a liar, what have I said? The second part to that statement is, I'm so honest, right? Muhammad is so weak, he's so frail. The second part to that statement, the part that I'm not saying, is I'm strong, of course. Because why else would I call you weak and frail if I was weak and frail as well? So the problem here with backbiting or speaking bad about people or speaking bad about governments is you're actually bigging up yourself at the same time and putting somebody down. Does that make sense? The only way to bring yourself, well, not the only way, but the way majority of people bring themselves up is escaping by actually realizing what they are. They escape by bringing people down, because automatically in bringing someone down, you're uplifting yourself rather than actually uplifting yourself. So they complain about the world, making them feel, and you see people who complain a lot, they have a lot of this whole self-righteousness thing about them. They think they're bloody amazing, right? Really and truly. And that's only because he has to dumb in everyone in the world just so he makes himself feel better, rather than actually addressing the fact that he's problematic. He has a lot of problems too.
Okay, so now inshallah ta'ala, for the final kind of phase of this podcast, inshallah, we're going to look at actionable steps to breaking free from this cycle of escapism, because we've now recognized that we're trapped and we're looking at all these different things. And inshallah ta'ala, everyone listening to this is going to reflect over their lives and going to think, look, I need to start focusing on what matters for me. And that's all that really matters. But how do I actually now make that change?
So the first step when it comes to breaking free of escapism, you need to recognize that you're trapped. All right, that's the first thing. And start calling yourself out. How do you do this? You need to become more aware, right? Whenever you do something, ask yourself, why am I doing this thing? I'm telling you, this is so important, especially for a mu'min, the Muslims. Like, it's so important that anything you do, just ask yourself first why. This can benefit you in every way, right? Even in terms of ajr, right? Before I do an act, I want to make sure it's for the sake of Allah. So by just pausing to remind myself that, why am I doing this? Literally, all right? Why did I get up this morning? For what? For whose sake? What am I trying to build? So when you start to become more intentional, it's very much more difficult for your mind to engage in things of escapism, because you understand that. Like even today, right, I was at the Nigerian embassy, and may Allah guide them for their lack of, organization and system. Wallahi, Abu Systems needs to go and help the Nigerian embassy because their systems are horrible. Allahumma musta'an. Been there since, I was there till about 11 to 3, right? So I'm sitting down and, let me make a cup of coffee. You don't want a cup of coffee. Like, okay, but why? Why do you want a cup of coffee? I don't. I'm fine. I'm not even tired at all, right? I'm completely fine, right? So how is it that, like, standing up for 2 minutes, making a cup of coffee, and then sitting back down, is it going to make the situation? No. No, don't stand up and make it. This is what you're trying to escape, like. And the thing about escapism is it's fake, because you can't really escape. You have to come back to it. Does that make sense? Right? So I'm like, no, just sit down and shut up, man.
I remember you gave me a series of questions, actually 2 questions. Simply, you're like, I asked you, how do I defeat escapism? You're like, first question, what am I escaping from? And number 2, once I found it, go and deal with that thing. Yeah. Simple.
It's 2 simple steps. So you just need to actually first understand that, like, okay, before I escape, what is it that I'm actually escaping from? And I always like to ask myself this, like, yeah, I'm escaping from sitting here. Okay, is the coffee going to free me from that? No, so shut up and sit down. Right? So many times, I have work to do. I'm about to finish a project. I get this urge to lift my phone. Okay, well, why am I about to lift my phone? Yeah, to be honest, it's just to escape the fact that this project is getting to a difficult section. Okay, put the phone away and get the project done. Does that make sense? So you have to become more aware as well. And like I said, bro, if you're overly engaged in escapism, eventually you end up following your shahwat as well, right? That's what happens. So many times, like, subhanAllah, I remember when I was young, especially, like, I'm working on something really, really difficult. Like, I have a project, I have loads of stress with, like, teams and my etc. And they're giving me absolute headache, bro, right? So I'm like, what? I'm gone. I'm leaving. Okay, but before I leave, what are some steps I could just take? It's like, harness the situation, right? Like, I'm escaping. I know I'm just trying to run away from dealing with all these things, but it's going to be there for me when I come back. Now, it's different when to say, like, okay, I'm stepping out because I want to come back and deal with this with a fresh head. It's different, right? But when I'm just, like, trying to get out, it doesn't make sense. So what you need to understand is you need to recognize the triggers. What leads you to doing things like escapism? Perhaps it could be boredom, stress, right? And you want to learn a better way to deal with these things. A lot of people, the reason that they engage, like they use social media a lot, let's be honest, bro, it's just because they're bored. It genuinely is because they're bored, bro. So they always use social media because the guy feels bored. Like, I don't have anything else to do. So, like, time has to be spent somewhere. Just like money has to be spent.
Can I ask you a question about that one specifically? Because you mentioned before in the other even the other podcast and even another part of this podcast, you mentioned that a person should get used to doing nothing. Is this not one of the abwab, one of the doors of entering shaitan? Shaitan can enter into you.
There's a saying, some sort of saying, like, an idle mind is easily picked up or deceived by the devil, right? When I tell you to get used to doing nothing, I don't mean per se do nothing, but it's to guide your thoughts in terms of, like, thinking, for example, like, what do I want to achieve for us? What do you want out of life? That's okay, right? Sometimes I can just be on the bus and just thinking certain things to myself, like, what are some actions I could do today that could, really grow this business forward? My point is, don't always stimulate yourself. I'm not saying don't do anything at all. I'm saying guide your thoughts to certain things that are beneficial for you. Does that make sense? So I think, number 2, you need to set boundaries with yourself, okay? Some people, the reality is they just need to delete social media. Like, they need to just stay away from it for a certain type of amount of time so they can actually regain balance in terms of their dopamine levels, which we'll talk about in the future, inshallah. Another thing you can do is, like I mentioned, learn to use escapism to your advantage. Now, what do I mean by that, right? Escapism can be good, but escapism isn't the right word anymore. It's actually to come out of a situation in order to come back and give it its best. Does that make sense? So, for example, if I know when I'm really stressed, I like to go out and drink a coffee. I need to come up with a procedure to deal with me when I'm stressed. That's actually beneficial, right? I can't drink a cup of coffee every time I'm stressed, bro, because then, you know, you always hear me say it's like 9 p.m. and I'm craving a cup of coffee. Like, I don't need coffee. I'm just stressed. And my way of dealing with stress is a cup of coffee, right? That's just how I do it. Whenever I'm stressed, I either drink tea or I drink coffee, right? But that doesn't solve the stress. So I need to come up with an actual procedure to deal with stress. Does that make sense? Which, alhamdulillah, we've built, right? So it's understanding what am I escaping from and what procedures can I build to actually get rid of it, right? To actually like handle that thing properly, okay? For example, let's say whenever I have a fight with people, I do something else. Again, come off the procedure. When this happens, how can I solve it? Okay, now, develop skills and hobbies. And the biggest reason why majority of entrepreneurs escape is because they work like 12 hours a day, which is just absolutely ridiculous. And they work these crazy hours and this crazy lifestyle. You just need to learn to gain some deep focused hours in a day and then have some time for what? For rebalancing your mind as well. If you have time to replenish, you don't engage in as much escapism. When you work like heavy hours, you're always going to engage in loads of escapism. You're going to want to escape because there's so much for your mind. But me, you know me, now I only do about 4 hours deep work a day, unless like we're working on like some insane project or something needs to be built. But deep focused hours, I only do 4 a day and I never do more than that. And I spend a lot of time replenishing, as you know. I like to sit down in the green at a window and drink my cup of tea, right? I like to read my books. Sometimes like I don't even read books to like learn new things. Sometimes it's just, I love going over the wisdom I've already learned. It's just my form of replenishing. It's how I relax and get my mind ready for tomorrow.
I even remember the day we were in Morocco, because like, you know, sometimes you're glued to your phone, even work, sometimes like, okay, you're overindulging work and we work on the screen. So we have to understand that that's still also affecting our mind. Remember the day we went to Morocco in a villa? It's like, bro, it's just greenery. It's like, I live in Ireland. It's a very green country. I've never just sat down just to appreciate just nature, just trees, green.
100%. And it's a problem for entrepreneurs. Like one of the things that I do is, me and Abdul Salam, especially back when he was still in the same town as me, when we still used to both live, you know, every morning we just used to drive down. There's a beautiful beach, like I think it's Castle Cara. And we just used to stay there, spend some time there. You know, do sprints back and forth, a bit of swimming in the cold water in the morning. It's a form of getting your mind locked in and right. So when I actually sit down to work, I don't engage in escapism, right? Give your mind time to replenish and relax, and you will engage in a lot less escapism. Give your mind time for that. Does that make sense? Not doing it at a time where you're supposed to be doing something else, right? Now, the next thing is you should have a daily plan. The more structured you are, the less odds you have of being blown around, right? By your day or being reactive by this thing that happens or escaping. When you have a structured plan, like, okay, your time, like for example, let's say coffee. There's a reason I've given myself a time. If you guys don't know, I drink coffee at 3:30 every single day, right? Around 3:30. So of course, set and 6, like today, there was no coffee because I'm here, the SF. But at 3:30 every day, I drink a cup of coffee, all right? And I like to just maintain that. The reason I do that is because it's easier for me. Like I can't, because I realized that I was escaping through coffee. So now there's a set time. That's when you escape. Now shut up. There's nothing till then, right? There's no thoughts my mind can come and give me till that time. So you create a plan. If you like, for example, riding horses, put a dedicated time to that. Not in the middle of a work day, like, yeah, let's go out. Does that make sense? That's escapism. So plan and structure your day where you have things that replenish you as well as your hours for work. And don't mix those two things together. Tamam? That's escapism.
Barakallah feek.
Feek baraka. Yeah, man. And if you don't learn to defeat escapism, you become enslaved to your desires and, you know, you become destroyed, really and truly. And I promise you, the day your forms of escape are taken away from you, you'll realize what kind of sorrowful life you live.
So I think we can even conclude it with escapism can lead to Jahannam.
It can. 100%. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Kuffar escaping daily, bro. When you ask people like, bro, like, I've had this conversation so many times, like, bro, like, what's your purpose on earth? You know, you speak to some of them sometimes. What's your purpose on earth? Like, bro, I don't care. Just drinking on Saturday, escapism. So, like, we're just going to keep drinking and somehow, like, life is going to become better or, like, somehow our purpose is going to be defined. Escapism. No one wants to think about the deeper thoughts, which is like, why am I here? What am I trying to do? Why is Fawaz here specifically? Okay, we have understanding of like why everyone's here, but me specifically, why am I here? What can I do? What can I fulfill in the world? What can I give to? What can I build? Right? The reason we never ask ourselves or get to ask ourselves these questions or ever, like sometimes I ask people questions, bro, he's like, I never thought of that. Why? Because like we engage in so much escapism, so our minds never go that far, right? Yeah, man, stop escaping. Ikhwa, I hope you've benefited greatly from today's podcast, and I want to drink a cup of coffee. No, but inshallah, you guys benefited. As always, if you guys have any questions, put them into the chat. Inshallah, we'll answer them in future episodes. Bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Inshallah, you gained and benefited from it. See you guys in the next one. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.